After joining the other platoons, we were ordered to take over the National Assembly building at the center of the enemy capital. This is where this meaningless war will end. The soldiers' hopes are growing steadily. After this final battle, we will have peace again. Finally! Uh-oh. Everyone listen up! We've gotten this far. And here's where the war is going to end. For sure. Now, I have but one command to give you. Guys, win! All ships proceed to the National Assembly building. Good luck. Yes, sir! Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Cybernator. In the last part, we took out 2 more missions really, and now we're in the final mission of the game, or as I like to call it, the Gauntlet. There's not much to this final level. It is a linear trek through a complete shitload of enemies. If you have the laser at level 2 or 3, I recommend using that. If you have the napalm gun, you're actually good in terms of taking care of the enemies because every enemy will die from one shot of that here. But there is a lot of enemies here, and I've seen some playthroughs, namely speedruns, just rush through this with careful guarding. If you're new to the game, don't do that. You're likely going to lose most, if not all, of your health by doing that. I'm just going to tell you that right up front. Now, in between parts, I actively looked around at the speedrun, namely of the Japanese version, just to see like the key differences, and yeah, I was right, there was more dialogue outright, but a lot of it is the kind of dialogue that plays while you're actively playing, not the stuff that the game pauses for. In fact, I feel there's a less pausing for the dialogue in that version of the game, just because the dialogue pacing isn't as awful in Japanese. With that said, there's also one very, very key omission to the US, I guess to the Western version of the game, in this level, and that's not until after the first of the 3 boss fights within it. More on that in a few minutes. Gotta say though, absolutely love this track. Cybernator's soundtrack overall is really good. Compared to Metal Warriors especially, I feel this has the more superior soundtrack. It's just so good. I need to look into Target Earth and playing that at some point too, just so I can show that game off in comparison to this one, the quote-unquote sequel, quote-unquote prequel. Now, according to the manual, this level's name is absolutely ridiculous. We are in the Axis capital, Suburbiansky Uzbekistansky. The downtown Capitol building is where the Axis Parliament gathers. With the interstellar colonies on the verge of war, the votes of these greasy-palmed politicians will determine the future of every man, woman, and child on Earth and in space. Your objective, use your 3-peater to lobby for peace. I believe 3-peater, by the way, is the name of the gun in the manual. Yeah, the 3-peater enemy eliminator, the 21st century cannon with 360 degree assault rotation and 3-way firing capability. Vulcan shells, laser beams, and homing gun missiles. Oh, so we're doing the usual American thing and bringing peace. Sorry, keeping peace. That's the term. Also, I love the background of this level. It oddly reminds me a bit of, and this is going to be a real weird reference, Knuckles Chaotix. Namely, the bad ending with the gigantic Metal Sonic. Just the red glowing effect reminds me a lot of that. With that said, this second screen acts more or less as a checkpoint in the level because you still have quite a few more enemies to go through. Fewer enemies, but still more enemies. Use your guard frequently here. In fact, I'd honestly suggest, especially on this screen, there are some enemies that will actively spawn behind you. Pace your walking well if you're not a speedrunner and just guard liberally. Because otherwise, you're probably going to take a lot of damage at a point in the game where you have more lives than when you started, more than likely, if you didn't die a lot in the early levels. But you still have plenty of death. That said, technically speaking, every life in this game is technically a continue because you lose your score after dying. As you might notice coming up in a little cleverly hidden jump cut right here. This assembly hall is in the hands of the Federated States Army. No, you won't. That voice. All right. Now, they imply this is Beldark we're finding. It's not. This is just a standard, bigger mech. He will float all over the place firing his Vulcan at you, and his little funnels, so to use the Gundam term, will continuously stay closer to you and try to get direct shots on you. If there's a place to use missiles in this final level, I feel it's here, just because, especially if you can get him trapped below the stairs or just above them, they're great for homing into him. Stupid fellow. Somebody! Somebody answer! Who's that? First Lieutenant Duke of Troop 32 AS, sir. The enemy's giant mobile weapons are starting to move. We need support. Where at? At the site of the National Assembly building. In the construction facilities. Wow. Respond. First Lieutenant Duke. Will this war never end? Now, this guy's running. Actually, maybe that was supposed to be Belvar because that's him actively running away. There is a scene removed right here in the US version where you zoom through the ceiling of that room up to the president's office where you attempt to take him in for capture, and then he shoots himself in the head. They took that out of the American version because, yeah, that's Nintendo being like, yeah, no suicides, please. And I think it's especially for potential political concerns because the banner behind said evil president is very similar to that of the European Union. With that said, now we're in another auto dash segment. You want to jump here especially because if you fall down, it's an instant kill. But this main thing is actually a boss fight against this yellow mech who has namely one notable attack, and that's a lightning beam. You'll know it's about to fire when its face starts sparking, so you can jump up to bait its fire to go upwards since it won't move the laser once it's started to use it. And there's also written dialogue completely removed here, implying that this is the guy we rescued in Mission 4. Rick, I think his name was. They removed that for no reason besides maybe censoring another death. I don't know. You're supposed to fight this boss until the scrolling ends like this. Or rather, you're supposed to have it beaten by the time the scrolling ends because we're at the end of the level now. But if you're too slow, thankfully the level does just stop and say, alright, here's a place you can stand still. With some last health drops, though, it's time for the final boss. Oh, that's big. Let's have a showdown. What will that prove? There's no use talking about it. Alright, fair. Alright, final boss is this giant-ass mech, which has like 5 or 6 different targets for us to destroy. I recommend starting low, though. Aim at the Vulcan cannon towards the bottom, because it's easily the thing that'll be firing at you the most early on. Notable, like your own Vulcan bullets, its Vulcan will bounce off the walls, so make sure you place yourself carefully and kind of go into a little circle formation to avoid the first shots and then the bounces. And while you're attacking that, you'll probably end up attacking and destroying the jet booster shield down here at the bottom, which is supposed to, I guess, slow its ascent. There's no time limit to this boss, thankfully. After that, I recommend sticking around the middle of the arena so you can take out its giant laser cannon slash, I guess, its secondary Vulcan. It'll try to just punch you with it initially, but if you destroy it, it does eventually become a gun that will scatter out some bullets every couple of seconds, really. If you're good at placing your mech ahead of time, it's easy to dodge. Once you destroy all those, we need to target its chin, that little thing that's firing those bolts right there. This is probably the hardest phase of the fight, because even though you get a lot of damage in with like even the level 3 laser, let alone the napalm, you need to move around a lot with these particular shots, as after about a second, they will accelerate towards wherever you're heading, because they slow down to try and home in on you. Once you destroy the chin, the head is our next target, although it'll only reveal itself every couple of homing shot volleys, in which case it'll aim at you, or wherever you were, with its own laser attack, which is surprisingly hard to dodge in my experience, at least in terms of placing yourself so it doesn't directly go for you. You need to really hesitate before moving in order to bait it to go a certain direction. It's an easy fight in concept, but I'll be real, the damage values from some of the pieces are absolutely ridiculous, so if you're not being super careful, it's very easy to take a lot of damage here and just straight up die. Thankfully, the final boss itself is a checkpoint, so if you lose lives and you have some extra ones, you'll be brought right back here, but still, I'd recommend being super, super careful. And after this, the ending starts, and which ending you get, as I mentioned before, depends on whether or not you failed missions 3 or 5 or succeeded in them. I'm going to show the bad ending first so we can end on a positive note. So with that, let's just let the endings take hold. The war is over. I was unsuccessful in fulfilling my mission for the Federated States Army. Many of our soldiers perished in this war for no reason. I should have tried harder to make a difference. I cannot find peace with myself in this ruined city. I can still remember the words of the old president. It's just the flow of time that has led us into war. His words will echo forever in my head. Was this war worth the price we paid for failure? I cannot live with myself, knowing that I could have won. You have not fully completed your mission. Try again. Again, this happens if you failed, I think, either mission 3 or 5, if not just both. I think failing just one, though, is what triggers this ending. And yeah, they even referenced the presidential suicide in that they removed in the final mission, that cutscene. A little bit odd that they left that in the script, but okay. With that, though, let's now head on to the much more positive notes, with the good ending, which is the one I got in the main playthrough. Again, bad ending I got on the Napalm run. At last, the war is over. The enemy's capital burns slowly to the ground. All of the soldiers look up to the red sky with silence. Their thoughts are no longer on destruction and war, but they look into the future. A new future that is filled with promise. I almost didn't survive this war. I'm not afraid of what tomorrow brings. Rather, I look towards the hope that comes with the next dawn. Many enemies have fallen by my hand. Hopefully, I'll never again have to raise my hand against another human being. The people can now live in peace. The flames that envelops the city diminish as the morning sun rises over the horizon. And we just get one hell of a bop for the credits theme on the good ending. I think bad ending has a slightly different song. I actively can't remember. But that's Cybernator. Out of the mecha platformers I've played on the Super Nintendo for this channel over the last couple of years, like namely this, Metal Warriors, and Not-Zeon, in terms of focus, this I think is the most polished game. With that said, in terms of difficulty curve, I still say Cybernator is probably the safest, because this game isn't afraid to kick your ass. Especially with how hard it can be to get the good ending on a first playthrough, just because you're probably not putting the power chips into the correct weapons to make that easier for you, barring maybe getting the napalm gun. But that said, the soundtrack's kick-ass, the cutscenes look great when they're there, and the dialogue is surprisingly adult for what it's trying to do. Don't get me wrong, the censorship definitely gets in the way on Nintendo's part there. Though I can understand at least wanting to get rid of the shooting yourself in head scene, because yeah, that's a little heavy for 1994, I think. And although it does make me laugh at Jake saying, "I hope I never have to raise my hand against another human being again," when he's in the sequel, Salt Suits Falcon 2. Though I don't think he's the playable character in that. I think he's an NPC that helps you out later on in it. Or is that Assault Suits Lanos too? At some point, I definitely will do this game's prequel, Target Earth on the Genesis, and I'll see if there's like a fan translation for the other games out there, though one of them is like a 3D tactical RPG, so that would be a lengthy LP. But I do recommend Cybernator. I think it's a great game. If you learn the levels and can get past some of the clunkier mechanics, it's really fun to go fast in. It's a great game. Let's see, what year was this released? 1992, yeah, wow. That's really advanced for the Super Nintendo in that era. That's 2 years after launch. And I can definitely see no one being okay with that in the US back in 92. Hot damn, this game would have gotten protested against by mothers at the time. And notably, if you do leave the presented by Konami screen on long enough, the song itself actively ends. But you also get treated to your high score screen, which shows your high score for having the console on at that point at least, your current score in comparison after your most recent death, and the same graphic of the mecha that we saw at the end of the intro cutscene back in part 1. I really recommend looking up this credits theme. It's really kick-ass. And let's take a look at my score. Not that there's much of a point to the score beyond maybe writing it in your notes section in the instruction manual. And with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great night. Take care. And I'll see you guys next Let's Play, whatever that may be. See you guys then.